Greetings, everybody. This is Jeff Roars. I'm Chief Marketing Officer of Jobvite, and welcome to the Summer to Evolve session, Too Talented on Job Descriptions and Interviewing. Very excited about this because we have a couple of great guests for you. But before we get started, let's go through the usual. This is a 12-week program with over 45 sessions. We're into week number 5, so our theme this week you see there, and you also see the next number that we've got coming up. Employee referrals next week, building diverse audiences. Oh, I'm missing an E. I will add that later. And later in the programming, we get into AI, automation, and analytics. So please join us for those. As I said, though, this is the week of job descriptions and interviewing. Got a couple more sessions for you this week. The demo day tomorrow takes place, and we'll talk about automating the interviewing process. And on Friday, we have our Recruiter Real Talk session, so much more of a peer-to-peer conversation. If you haven't registered for those, please do at thesummertooevolve.com. Now, without further ado, let me introduce our speakers, our guests today. One of them is a good friend of mine, Todd Cappone. Todd, are you there?
I am. I'm waiting for the camera to pop back on. There we go.
Excellent.
So, hi, Jeff.
Hey, how you doing? Where do we find you today?
I am in sunny, beautiful Palatine, Illinois. Beautiful this time of year. So it's great to see you.
Excellent. You are the fine author of this book, The Transparency Sale. For those who do not have it, please consider picking up a copy at your local bookseller. I love the whole thesis of the book. Can you give us just the quick 1-2 on it, Todd?
Yeah. I've always been enamored with decision and behavioral science, and then sales and sales philosophy, kind of a weird combo. But in my last role as Chief Revenue Officer of Power Reviews, we had done a study that looked at how consumers act when a website is acting as the salesperson. And what they found was that obviously we all look at reviews, but negative reviews sell, right? Having the negatives right next to the positives help products sell. And I then looked into the behavioral science to see, hey, does that apply to human, or when a human is being the salesperson, does the same methodology apply? And what I found is absolutely it does. Imperfection sells better than perfection. And then as somebody who has hired lots of people, interviewed lots of people, I found that when we're selling the greatest commodity of all, which is ourselves, that transparency absolutely applies there too. So great to be here.
Excellent. And I see favorite vacation, New Zealand or Germany and Austria. So I'm going to make you pick. You can only go to one.
Oh, New Zealand is incredible. Like, it is just unbelievable there. Spent lots of time running a sales organization headquartered out of there. So I used to commute to Auckland, New Zealand once a quarter for a couple of years, which is insane, but just love spending time there. And I would live there if given the opportunity.
Wonderful. Well, let's welcome your partner in crime today to the session, William Tincup. He is a consultant, an analyst, a practitioner, a raconteur, I believe, and artiste, I just learned. Welcome, William.
Welcome, Jeffrey. How are you?
I am doing really well. We're excited to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about what is your latest and greatest thing you have cooking up? You always have some sort of project going on.
I've started a new podcast. It's called the Use Case Podcast, where I'm trying to actually figure out what happens with practitioners once the demo's done. So once we do the technology demo and we leave, the jazz hands are done, and we leave, what happens? Like, how do they talk to their peers? How do they sell to the CFO? How do they sell to their team? So I'm trying to figure that out. And so it's a fun podcast because I get to talk to technology vendors about what they think happens and what they want to happen. And then eventually I'll talk to practitioners about what actually happens. So somewhere in there, there's storytelling around software. And I don't quite have all the answers yet.
I love that premise. I don't think I've ever seen anybody do that in a podcast.
Yeah, it's been something that's kind of like what Todd said. It's been something that's kind of noodled at me for a while, and I've wanted to figure this out. So it'll probably take about 300 or 400 podcasts to get to where I can really talk eloquently about what I've learned about storytelling. but I'm excited. But that's just, I think I launched the first one this week.
Excellent. So let's see here. Florida Gulf Coast is your favorite, but I imagine maybe not right now?
No, in fact, we have friends over there right now, which we were supposed to be. There's this little necklace called 30A. It's in between Destin and Panama City, and it's blue-green water, white sand. It's gorgeous. It's like the being in the Caribbean, but you're in Florida. It's crazy. And we were supposed to be there with these like 4 or 5 other families, and they decided to go. And we were like, no, we're not. We're going to stay home. Thanks.
It's an interesting time to navigate vacations and everything right now with the pandemic and stuff. And I feel for everybody who's having to kind of make that decision. So hopefully we'll provide a little bit of rest and relaxation here with some good takeaways in this conversation. It's very relevant to me right now. And you see a little bit about myself there and just a little bit, on the administrative side. If you've got questions, I am clicking open the questions panel right now and go to webinar, so I'll see questions come in and I'll weave them into our conversation. And if you derive any powerful insights, please, by all means, use the hashtag JobviteS2E and tag our speakers as well. We are recording the session so that you can share this with others, or if you have to drop off early. But the reason the topic is mine to me is that I joined Jobvite now, about 3.5, 4 months ago, and I'm now getting into the hiring of some roles, some of which are, frontline, SDR kind of folks. So those job descriptions are pretty rote and mechanical, or they can be. And then there's some more bespoke kind of roles that I'm thinking about. So, I want to start maybe with a very broad question. We'll start with you, William, on kind of the practitioner and talent acquisition side of this, and then we'll move to Todd on like the hiring manager perspective. But as you approach job descriptions today, how important are they? And what's the investment of time and energy that you recommend recruiters and hiring managers put into them, and why?
Well, it's your first impression, right? I think this is where we've all, again, my hands are bloody with this, and I'm assuming everybody that's listening has made this mistake where you go into a job site like Indeed or Career Builder and you cut and copy somebody else's job description or job ad, and then you put it into Word, you kind of smith it a little bit, and you post it as yours. The thing is candidates are looking for authenticity, and they're looking for specifics. They're looking for more transparency around the company, the job, the manager, the bit, the capabilities and competencies, etc. And they want to get there quick. Whereas, like, I would have, not to get into age or anything like that, but I would have fought through a 3,500 word job description with not a problem. Like, I would just read, and the benefits and this, that, the other. And I think that those days are way behind us. I think that we need to think of job descriptions more like drip campaigns, where we put something in front of someone and say, here's the 10 things that make this job really special. Does this sound interesting to you? And then if they're interested in that, then that leads to the next discussion. And I think as a collaborative tool, we should look at job descriptions between sourcers, recruiters, and hiring managers as a way to basically collaborate on and sussing out what's important and what's critical. And let's get out all the things that we think are important. Let's get all that stuff out of the ad, out of the description, and get to the critical. There's 10 things that are critical about this job, and 3 of those are even most critical, if you will. And I think that's where the collaboration between those 3 different groups of people, you've got to make sure that we're all on the same page. We're searching for the same type of person, and we've agreed on what that is.
Sure. Todd, as somebody who's hired sales teams, led revenue organizations, how William is framing it up strike you in this moment?
Well, first of all, that tear rolling down my face was from all of the times that I went onto LinkedIn and I found an account executive job description, and then I cut and pasted it and said, this is ours. And I mean, that's what we do. But when you think about a sales candidate, right, it's a mutual sale, right? It's just like you're going to sell a product. You're selling something, but the customer is selling on the match. And so I've always looked at job descriptions as almost like a sales brochure. And knowing the behavioral science around human beings, like we're all wired to try to predict what our experience is going to be like with a product, with a service, or with a new job. Like having your job is what you spend all your time doing. So I think that, like William said, it's the first impression, but it's the first opportunity that a company has to either build or erode trust, right? And you do that through being authentic and showing who you really are and helping that potential candidate look at it and go, yeah, I can predict what my experience is going to be like to a certain extent. And I think I would like this, or I'm not going to waste their time and my time applying for this job because it doesn't feel like it's right for me. And, you know, if you take a step back, I know this is counterintuitive, but I think there's an opportunity in job descriptions to reveal what people might not like about a role or what the challenges might be too. I mean, due to the proliferation of reviews and feedback, every single company, every single person that's watching this, their company probably has reviews sitting somewhere on Glassdoor, and candidates are looking for that, right? And so if you can help them predict and then address the elephant in the room before people apply, I think you're going to spend a lot more time on the right candidates, and the candidates are going to spend more time on the opportunities that they would be a good fit for.
So Todd, I think you nailed it with a great job ad, job description. I'll use those words as synonyms. Is half of it should attract and half of it should repel. So when somebody says, "Oh, I had 20,000 people that applied to this job," it's like, why? What did you do wrong? Because you shouldn't have. There's enough of those people that should have looked at it and said, "Yeah, that's not for me. That's not, I shouldn't apply to that job because even if I got the job, I'd hate it." And I'll give you a great example of who used to do this really well and probably still does. Is it was a hosting company down in San Antonio, and what they would do is they would talk openly about their culture. We drink a lot of Mountain Dew. We all work 14-hour days. We all skate. There's a skate park, and you know, we work 7 days a week. We might not work 2 or 3 hours, but on the weekends, and we play frisbee golf. You know, like they put all these things in there that as a candidate, if you could look at it and go, yeah, that's not my bit. I have the capabilities and I have the talent and the skills to do the job, but I don't really see myself in that place. That's perfect because the job that did its job in the sense of it repelled people that wouldn't have been eventually a good, and you nailed it again, Todd, match. That at the end of this, the two sides of this, we're trying to get to a great match between the two of us, company side, candidate side. We're trying to get to this perfect match. And if it's not a match, it feeds no one's interest if it's not a great match for both parties.
I remember the best job description and kind of hire that I ever made from a job description in the actual posting. It was looking for someone who was a web developer but creative, and I remember something along the lines of, you know, when you were younger, you've always drawn outside of the lines, and that really hasn't changed in adulthood. And that gentleman went on to become a really capable solution consultant at ExactTarget and then Salesforce, and has had a really successful career. And I'm reminded of that job description because he reminded me of it. He said, that is the reason I applied, is it had personality. Now, I'm intrigued here, Todd, because you came from a cut and paste world. All right, and there are a lot of recruiters who are probably on this call right now who are very frustrated with hiring managers who are cut and paste hiring managers and don't put the time into it. So what is your advice to recruiters who are desperately trying to get the hiring manager to convey culture or convey things that'll differentiate and draw those, you know, that cream of the crop applicant to a position?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's empathy, right? It's like true empathy, not the cliche, but it's like put yourself into the shoes of the individual that would be your ideal hire and understand what are the types of things that would draw them in. I think you can look across your organization and go, that girl, that person, they are perfect employees of us. They would also be perfect candidates. Like, go ask them. Like, what are the types of things that would, if they saw it in the opening paragraph of a job description, they would go, that's the kind of company I want to be at. And I think it just starts with get out of your own bubble and, you know, stop the cut and paste and start to think like the individuals you're trying to hire and be a marketer, right? Like, what are the things that are going to draw in the ideal customer, which is the ideal candidate in this case?
Sure. So a question for you both. The one challenge you have when you do add that creativity to it, you might accidentally be adding a filter that prevents certain people who are very qualified and who could be a good fit to the culture. You know, it could limit your diversity and inclusion. It could cordon folks off. So how do you balance that legal and creative notion? Do you, have you had success, partnering not just with the recruiter, but also with legal on that conversation, or how do you balance those things?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. I think there's technologies that actually can help with making sure that the language is maybe not. I'm thinking about Textio or even other products like that can help you with language that isn't masculine or language that kind of puts off different types of people, be that age or race or gender or sexual orientation, etc. So I think from a words perspective, I think you can get there. And I'll put diversity and inclusion for aside for just a second, because I want to hit one of the things that you want to do, as Todd said, is think like a marketer. If somebody can come along and scratch out your name at the top of the job ad and put somebody else's name at the top of the job ad, you're doing it wrong. So it should be so unique to your company that it's a fingerprint.
I like that.
And, you know what I mean? Like, it's got to be that unique.
I haven't heard that put that way. I think that's really astute. That's neat.
So if we think of it like that, and again, this is a collaborative project between sourcers and recruiters and hiring managers. It's not one's responsibility. This is a true collaborative project where we come together and say, okay, we need to attract this talent. And we want to have a diverse and inclusive group of people that apply to this, but we also want to be unique enough that we really show who we are, who the company is, what we're trying to achieve, etc., what the job's about, all that type of stuff. So I think language is important. I think words are important. I think iconography and imagery is important. It's something we haven't hit on yet, but I know that it's important, is once you have kind of the perfect job ad, you're still going to have to get traffic to it. You know, like there's great job ads on Indeed, let's say. I mean, use them as an example, but it's a tree in the forest, right? If you have a great job ad and no one sees it, who cares? So I think as we think of these things, we need to think of creating that uniqueness. We need to think about language. We need to think about creating that fingerprint, all that stuff. But we also need to, as a part of our strategy, think about, okay, we have something great. Now we've created something great. Kind of like that painting, just kidding. All right, we've created something great. Well, we got to get people to see it. Mm-hmm. So there's that whole other line of thought. Now, I definitely want to talk in a second about D&I, but Todd, I'm sure you got some other things you want to add.
Yeah, I actually had a question for you, because this whole conversation, you know, obviously the world has changed in the last 4 months, and we went from a potential employees market to an employer's market. Right. How are you thinking about that in terms of the change that's gone on? That now, I know that if I was hiring, I would be getting candidates that are just throwing their name at everything because there's desperation. How does that work in the wording of the job description? Even
more important now, and so in December, let's just go back to 19, because it was a better time. And so in 19, it was a candidate-driven market because of scarcity and surplus, right? So now we're in an employer-driven market. That doesn't change anything. It just makes it harder because more people are going to apply. They're going to apply to 100 jobs or 1,000 jobs a day or whatever the bid is. It's just going to create noise, which makes it even more important as a collaborative project to make sure that you do both attract and repel. It also makes it more important to have a series of assessments and skill testings and other things in front of your interview process, so that you can then get down to a number of candidates that you really know are great and you really know would do a good job, and then you kind of work your process from there. But it's even more important now to be authentic and to be transparent, so that you can repel, so that you can actually, the attract part isn't as hard. I would still say that in certain positions like police officers, nurses, software engineers, data scientists, it's still actually a candidate-driven market. But outside of that, you need to have a great ad, drive traffic to that ad like as if no one could see it, and then put up a bunch of what I call gauntlets of things that you want to basically take candidates through to make sure that you're really interacting with the candidates that are going to be really, really great candidates to then put in front of the hiring manager, which leads me to the kind of the bid on diversity and inclusion. So the ad itself, again, perfect ad, great language, transparent. We've done all the things that we want to do. That hasn't changed some of the behaviors of sourcing, recruiting, and hiring managers. So one of the things that I think we've got to kind of push each other on is that when we talk to sourcers, the job ad has been kind of really, really sculpted. It's beautiful. It's a fingerprint. And now we're going to put it out in front of the marketplace and attract and repel. When we talk to the sourcers, we should instruct them, when you come back and you really fall in love with 10 candidates, let's say, make sure that that's a diverse and inclusive slate of candidates. And the same thing with recruiters, the same conversation. We need to have that kind of tough conversation of, hey, listen, if you pass over 5 middle-aged, pear-shaped white guys, we failed. We failed the hiring manager. We failed the company. So we should have never have allowed that. Okay, that we'll just kind of forgive that for a moment, but we shouldn't allow that going forward. We should, with sourcing, with recruiters, and with hiring managers, we should always layer in those harder conversations of, is this diverse and inclusive enough of a slate of candidates for us to really start the process with?
And one of the things that really opened my eyes, I was talking to one of the founders of LinkedIn, and we were talking about this subject because, there was a time where we would place a job description and we would get 20 applicants and they all looked exactly the same. And our excuse was to go back and go, hey, we put the job description out. This is what we got. But that's our fault, because we've written the job description in a way that has probably kept that to that type of person, right? And so that's on us to go back and look at our job descriptions and to rewrite them in the mode of understanding that if our job description is designed to attract our ideal candidate and that's what we're getting, then we've written the job description wrong. And there's a real opportunity to go back.
I actually think that you nailed it earlier when you said, hey, who are some of the people that we've attracted that are kind of winners? I think if we look at our employees as people we can go test this with, it's like we're about to put this out in front of the marketplace, and we go to our, all the different communities that make up our company and just go, hey, tell us if something's not right here. Like, it's okay. Criticism is a good thing. What's not right? If you're reading this from a gender perspective, or from an LGBTQ perspective, or from a race perspective, etc., or age perspective, is there anything that claws out at you as like, yeah, we should get rid of that language or that word or the way that we bring in this experience, etc. And so I think that, we can use, as you already kind of alliterated, we can kind of use our own audience as a way of testing these things to make sure that, again, that we get better at diversity and inclusion. I think some of it's just that human behavior and talking with people and saying, okay, listen, I know this is a tough job to fill. I get it. We're going to have some tough conversations about this. However, when we pull this and we push this in front of the hiring manager, we're going to put a diverse and inclusive slate of candidates in front of them, or we're just going to keep trying to fill it to where it is.
I've got a
And I
big
will
smile
also,
on my face, Todd, and William, because last week we had our two talented on candidate communications with Madeline Lorano and Jay Baer, and we actually veered into this very topic where Jay was pretty adamant that, hey, you're hiring a person to join a team. Why don't you make sure the team looks at the job description to verify and add input on the type of individual and the skills that they know need to fit into their team.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add that I was just going to add that, you know, you've got your job description, but then on Indeed and on Glassdoor, there is piles of reviews from current and former employees that are sharing what their experiences were like, what they felt the culture was like. So beyond just going into the employees that you have, you've got to go in eyes wide open before you write this job description and understand what these candidates are reading and understanding about your culture. And then that's incumbent upon you to address the elephant both internally across your organization, but in your outreach for potential future candidates.
So,
Jeff,
Sophia, yeah, please go ahead, William.
No, the only point on the team thing that we want to make sure the audience gets is there's two kind of lines of thought. One is sometimes that's where bias is actually the worst. Is actually a team looks at somebody that's different. Like, okay, the story is all four of us went to well, it'd be three of us, seems that there's three of us on the call. All three of us went to Princeton. Okay, all of us got our MBAs at Harvard, and all of us then went on to private equity firms in Manhattan. You know, life's pretty easy because the three of us have all had very similar experience. We've all played golf at the same place. We've all eaten at the same restaurants. Conversations between the three of us, pretty simple. Somebody that's different represents conflict, and it's an inherent conflict. So you throw a woman, same age, you know, went to the same schools, maybe even had the same experience, conflict. So sometimes teams can actually be the front line of bias. So one thing I would just make sure as we do that we also say, are we looking to round out the team and make the team, you know, different and diverse. Second thing on teams, the danger of teams driving some of this, being a part of, yes, driving, scared, is as we all know, A players hire A players, right? You get a B player in there on the team or a team of B players, they're not hiring an A player. And so there's a danger, not just on the diversity and inclusion post, but you get into a Peter principle where you've got a bunch of C and D players because you've let the team dictate who joins the team.
Right.
So just make sure that we have it as maybe a point in the process, but just one data point, not the be all end all.
So Sophia asks a question here that I'm going to use to bridge the conversation from job description to interviewing. So should, in the job description or the interview, should you be prioritizing selling the company or the job? And I'm going to start with you, Todd.
Yeah, I mean, I just view the job description as a brochure for the product you're selling, right? And I don't think you can prioritize either one. My personal opinion is you're creating an experience for this employee that they're going to be spending the bulk of their life with, and that you need to sell both equally. That not only you're going to show up every day, love what you do, love who you do it with, love who you do it for, but then organizationally, does the purpose of the role matter? Am I in an environment where I feel safe? Do I have control? Like all of the types of things that matter to an individual that drives decision making and drives engagement. You know, from a sales perspective, it used to be the old axiom that salespeople are coin operated, but that's wrong. That if we are using variable compensation to motivate people, we are doing it wrong. That variable compensation should be the reward for doing work that you are intrinsically motivated to do, and that's the job and the company both together. And I think your job description should be a reflection of that.
So I want to follow up on something you said there that was interesting to me, because you talked about it should be selling the experience. So as a hiring manager, you have the opportunity to craft the people that are going to be in the interview process for the candidate. So I'm interested in both your perspectives there about, do you feel, based on your experience, that organizations are putting enough time into crafting that right set of people, but also preparing them for the interview and what they need that individual to get out of that interview? And if not, how can organizations, how can recruiters positively impact that interview process?
I'll take a stab at it. I think Sophia's question, first of all, it's a great question. Thank you, Sophia. Neither. So you should sell neither the company nor the job. The job of a recruiter is actually to be the candidate's advocate. And so if you're a great recruiter, your job is to actually learn more about the candidate, find out what their needs, what they want to learn, where they want to be, how they the best version of them at the
William, I'm going to warn
organization.
you, Todd's taking notes now. You said something very important. You're tweeting or writing.
But it's you're not selling either. What you're doing is you're trying to find out, you're trying to discover, like an archaeologist and anthropologist, you're trying to discover what makes that candidate tick, and does it make sense? And answering, it's a two-way street. When you're a great recruiter, it's a two-way street. We're going to spend an hour together. 30 minutes of it is, I want you to ask me questions about us. And the more pointed, the better. Okay? And 30 minutes is, I want to discover things about you. And that's a great recruiter, because that's an advocate for the candidate and creating a great candidate experience, which that's one of the things you're thinking about, is how do we make that candidate experience better, richer, and how do we carve the candidate experience up into maybe a couple thousand micro experiences. But ultimately, if you're a great recruiter, your job is to actually be that candidate's advocate and then get them to the hiring manager. Then all the competencies and skills and all that other stuff, that's all been sussed out by then. Now we're just trying to figure out, is this the right next role for you? All right, Todd.
Yeah, and I'll add, there's some behavioral science around, it's the science of engagement, and there's 6 categories that drive engagement in individuals. And at its core, we are feeling machines that think, not thinking machines that feel. That's an Antonio Damasio quote. But at its core, the 6 things are, the first thing we're looking for is feedback. So we're looking for status, and we want to be recognized. We want to be validated. But the second one is forecast, meaning we're trying to predict what our world is going to be like. When we're unpredictable as leaders, that's actually a crazy maker for the brain. It actually lowers our IQ while we're at work. So we're trying to create that forecast for the individuals. The third one is freedom, meaning we're looking for autonomy. We're looking for control. We're looking to be trusted. Micromanagement is the opposite of that, right? So as individuals, we're looking for that. The fourth one is family, meaning we want to be surrounded by people that have each other's back, that we have safety. It's one of the problems with remote employees right now. One of the downsides is that even though we might feel like we're a part of something, when we're remote, our survival mechanism kicks in a little bit. So we've got to make sure to manage that. The fifth one is function, meaning, do we have purpose? Does the company and the job and the role matter to our customers' customers, and the people I work for? And then the sixth one is fairness, which means, is the juice worth the squeeze? Am I going to get the reward for the effort that I put in? And the reward is not just money, but it's those other 5 things that I just mentioned. And so, Jeff, to your point, it's about surrounding the interview process with people that can help them predict what their experience is going to be like in those 6 categories. And if you can do that right, I mean, you and I, we worked at Exact Target together. I remember there was a guy named Andy Kofoid, who was the chief operating officer. I was not interested. I literally wrote Andy an email with 3 bullets saying, I am not doing this. My wife's about to have a baby. Like, there was all this stuff. And he was like, Todd, just come down to Indianapolis, spend the day with us. Like, I'll take you out to dinner. And then the next day the first person I met with was the CEO, Scott Dorsey. I met with the CFO, Tracy Dolan, Dwayne Poole. Like they put me through the whole thing. And at the end, I called my wife and I was like, looks like I'm changing jobs. I mean, they created that experience for me that hit on all 6 of those things and showed me that the juice was absolutely going to be worth the squeeze, and it was the best decision I ever made.
Well, and that takes a hiring manager knowing the criticality of that hire, and then working with that recruiter to ensure they can line up all those executives, because those folks they don't normally have slots in their calendars just fall from the sky. That took some effort and some teamwork between recruiter and hiring manager, I suspect.
Oh yeah, I would imagine. As the organization got bigger, that kind of process went by the wayside. But I think you can, I'm an advocate for creating a checklist of those 6 things and then making sure that as a part of the process, we're addressing all 6 of those. While we as human beings might communicate with logic that what we care about is, our career and our paycheck and, that sort of thing, it is those 6 that actually drive engagement and drive the happiness that also leads to, success and growth in your career. And so making sure that you're hitting on those as a part of the process, just find the people that can help them predict.
Now, gentlemen, I could go on and on and on, and it tells me that we'll have to do a separate session deep on interviewing at some point, but I want to make sure we weave in some more of these questions and comments. So Daniel says, beard is looking fabulous, William. And a great session so far. His question, and he might have missed it, was difference or your thoughts on job ad versus job description.
That's a great point, and especially for people that are a little bit more visually inclined, they might be different because something might be a little bit more visual. Software engineer, comma, $385,000, comma, San Jose, comma, in a URL. For some people, especially that are visually oriented, that gave me enough information to then start the process of learning about what's next. And so they might be different, but they also might be the same insofar as you're using essentially the foundation of one to build the other. And I think both of you have said this. Actually, we need to think like marketers with these instruments. And so if we put something out in front of the market, and maybe it's more visual or maybe it's shorter, well, it's okay. So now let's think about a job description or a job ad. Let's think about that as a tweet. Okay, so what can we get across in that many characters that kind of conveys like what we want people to think is the next step? Okay, or what repels them, again, attract and repel. So I think we have to test. So Daniel, thank you for the compliment on the beard. That's really just laziness more than anything else. But I think the thing is test. The best recruitment marketers are folks that come into work with a lab coat on, and they try different things. They put something together, they try it, it doesn't work. They try something else, it doesn't work. Then they try something else and it works. And they keep tinkering until they get it right. But I think first of all, getting everyone on the same page of what's really critical about this job, and get all the noise out of these documents. Get all the stuff that's, later on down the road, if you want to know about our benefits, and that's like really critical to you, fantastic. But do we have to have that conversation on the first date? No, of course we don't. So I think that we need to look at those things and get out a big giant red felt pen and just start Xing out all the things that we don't think are critical to conveying what that message is. But it's a great question. I think you can use those as synonyms, and we can use those documents in that way. So a job ad can be a job description, but it can also not be that. And we need to allow for different audiences might need something different from you, and we just need to test.
Perfectly well said. I mean, the only thing I would add is that there's a lot to be learned from the world of e-commerce. And William, like you said, our brains, like, have you ever opened an email and the email was like multi-paragraphs long, your
Yes.
brain cries a little on the inside when it sees that. It's, oh, this is work, right? You know,
Yeah.
if you think about a good product page on a website, it's got a couple of bullets and then an invite to learn more, right?
Yes.
And those bullets are the highlights. Like, here's the 4 core things. If you want, just click to read more. I think any job description, job ad should be thought about, because the reason e-commerce does that is they don't want your brain to cry a little on the inside, and they want you to be intrigued by that or move on. And if you're intrigued, they want to invite you in. And I think that that's a good methodology to think about with all we do in sales, but especially in the recruitment process too.
That's a perfect way to think about it. Again, if you're allowing, what's great about that is you're not just making a better experience for your team and et cetera, you're making a better experience for the candidate. So it is really a better candidate experience. If they want to know more, you've given them the ability to know more, but you've also given them the ability to go, no, good. So yeah, I know, Jeff, you've got some more questions, so we'll go on.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're gonna have to wrap up here shortly. One question was, Todd, can you rattle off the 6 things again? Somebody was scribbling furiously and just wanted to make sure they got them.
I'll read them even faster this time. No, they're called my 6 F's of engagement. But the first one's feedback, which encompasses recognition, status, validation. That the second one is forecast, our ability to predict what our world is going to be like. The third one is freedom. I should know these off the top of my head. I've said them so many times, but the third one's freedom, which is the autonomy, the trust, the tools and resources to do my job with oversight, but not too much oversight. The fourth one is family, meaning we are surrounded by people that care about us and have our back, safety. The fifth one is function, which is mission, purpose. Does what I do matter to myself, to my coworkers, to my bosses, to my customers and their customers? And then that sixth one is fairness, meaning is the reward worth the effort? Is the juice worth the squeeze?
Great. And do you have a blog post or anything on that you've written, or is it in the book?
It's not in the book, and I'll write a blog post. That'll be my action item.
So,
it'll be in the next book.
If folks follow you on Twitter, T Caponi, you might be writing a blog post on it, right?
There you go. Exactly.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, we've hit our time. There was a question here about legal requirements, and just for clarification for Chris, in the last part of our conversation here, we were kind of differentiating between a job ad, which is much more succinct, generating attention, versus a job description, which clearly has got to make sure that you've got your legal T's crossed, I's dotted, et cetera. And that's something that recruiters need to be working with, and hiring managers as well. But if folks have additional questions for you, best way to reach you, Twitter, otherwise. So Todd, why don't I start with you?
Yeah, I mean, connect with me or on LinkedIn and then ask away. I'm always happy to help out in any way I can. But you can, like, I'm impossible not to find, which is kind of annoying, but just a quick Google search, you'll find 50 ways to get a hold of me, and I'd be happy to help.
Excellent. And William?
And Todd has a parody Twitter account, so just beware. The real Todd.
The real Todd Capone is the parody, so stay away from that one.
Fair enough.
You've arrived when you have that. Yeah, Google William Tincup, you'll be able to find me. The one thing I want to leave people with is hiring, should be a team sport. If done well, it should be a team sport, and oftentimes it isn't.
Well, I think that's a great place to end. And I wanted to share that if folks are interested a little bit more on what Jobvite can do in this area, we have something called Bias Blocker on the tech side of things. If you're looking to address language and make sure that it's not introducing bias into it, you can find more by just going to our site and asking for a product tour and connect with our folks. And coming up on the Summer to Evolve this week, we've got our demo day tomorrow on automating the interview scheduling process, and then a great Recruiter Real Talk. I love these sessions. We mean them to be peer-to-peer conversations, so feel free to drop into that, register at thesummertoevolve.com. So on behalf of everybody at Jobvite, I want to thank Todd. I want to thank William. We appreciate you joining. We're in week 5 of 12, so go to the Summer to Evolve, learn more about the programming, and have a great rest of your day.